Hi, and welcome to episode number 9 of Ask Ian. My name is Ian Westerman, and I'm the head pro at EssentialTennis.com. Today's question comes to us from Salman, who wrote in and said, "In my city, it's always windy, and the wind messes up my game. Could you give me some tips on how to play with the wind?" Sure. There's no doubt that the wind can often be frustrating. Probably the most common thing that I like to respond with when somebody asks me about the elements, the wind, the sun, or even crowd noise or things like that, is simply to point out that those types of challenges are the same for both players. So take a little bit of, I guess, consolation in the fact that when it's really windy out and it's very difficult, just know that it's the same for your opponent. You know, you're both experiencing that same element. It's difficult for both players. And so I guess my number one piece of advice for you right away would be don't let that get you down emotionally. Don't let that bring your attitude down a level and get you negative because, I mean, we all know what happens to our game typically when we allow that to happen, right? So let's talk about some practical ways to deal with the wind because that's really, really important. The first and most important way to deal with it, practically speaking, is to identify immediately the direction that the wind is moving in. Most days, when you head out there to the courts and there's a steady wind, a wind that's very clearly changing what the ball is doing, usually there's at least somewhat of a consistent direction that the wind is moving in. You know, north to south, east to west, west to east, whatever it is, usually there's some kind of consistency. And yes, there's going to be a little bit of variation, but there's usually a general direction that the wind is moving in. The sooner that you can identify what that general direction is, the more effectively you're going to be able to adjust efficiently and actually make it easier for yourself. And on really tough, windy days, when there's difficult windy conditions like that, usually the player who wins is the one who can adjust most quickly and most effectively. And so if you can be the player that first identifies, I mean, yes, clearly you're both going to know right away it's windy in general. If you can be the first player to identify what direction the wind is moving in consciously and actually make adjustments consciously for that direction of wind, then you'll have a much better chance of winning that match. So what do I mean exactly? So there's two, general main directions the wind could be moving. Lengthwise with the courts or widthwise. With the net would be widthwise, at the net would be lengthwise. If the wind is traveling lengthwise, one way or another, predominantly, then you know that on one side of the courts, you're going to need some extra safety. When the wind is at your back, you're going to need a little bit of extra spin on your serves. You're going to need a little bit of extra spin on your ground strokes, a little bit more margin for error, because that wind is going to carry your shots. So you have to be careful about hitting anything flat and hard because the wind is naturally going to carry the ball much further than what you're used to. And so you got to be careful about making mistakes by hitting long. When you're on the other side of the courts and the wind is coming towards you, now is your chance to really swing all out. And you don't want to leave shots short over and over and over again because you're not paying attention to the wind. So hit with full confidence. Give yourself extra height than you normally do and really just swing out at the ball because that wind, that consistent wind coming towards you is going to bring it down much sooner than it typically would. So just general ideas there for lengthwise wind. When the wind is traveling widthwise from right to left or left to right, quite honestly, that's the much trickier scenario for two reasons. First of all, it affects your spacing. It affects your positioning. So if the wind is blowing from your right to your left, then you know that if you're a right-handed player, on all your forehands, the ball is going to naturally come into your body more than what you're expecting. On your backhand side, it's going to be moving away from you. And on the other side of the court, this is the tough part. When you move to the other side of the court, it's the opposite. On your forehand, it's moving away from you. On your backhand, it's going to come into you, and it's going to naturally jam you a little bit more. If you can be aware of that, that's the biggest step here. If you can just be aware of that direction and aware of how it moves the ball, That's a crucial first step so that you can start to give yourself more room on one side and less room on the other side. And as you switch courts, reverse it. So the positioning and the footwork aspect is absolutely crucial. And the last thing I'll point out is just simply your targeting. When you're dealing with a wind that's moving right to left or left to right, when you aim to one side of the court, you're naturally going to have some more safety, some more cushion, because the wind is going to be blowing the ball into the middle of the court. On the other hand, when you aim for the other half of the court, widthwise, now all of a sudden there's an extra element of danger because the wind is wanting to blow the ball off the court. So anytime you aim a ground stroke or you pick which side to attempt a passing shot on, you must be aware of what's happening with the wind. You must be aware what direction it's moving in and therefore what adjustments you need to make both with your positioning and with your targeting. If you can be the player that's more aware of those situations with the wind and you're the player that makes the smarter adjustments with your positioning and with your targets, then I promise you that you will have a better chance of winning those matches when you're in windy conditions. So, Salman, thank you so much for your question. I really appreciate you being a viewer and also writing in with your topic suggestion. I appreciate that very much. If you're watching my answer to Salman today and you've enjoyed this video, do me a favor and click like. Also subscribe to my channel here on YouTube so that you don't miss out on any future episodes or other lessons that I publish on a regular basis. Lastly, if you have a question that you'd like me to answer for you, leave that down below in the comments, and hopefully I'll be answering your question in a future episode of Ask Ian. Until then, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Take care, and good luck with your tennis.